It all began with apprenticeship. Prior to what we know today as internship, apprenticeship has always been a cultural thing in the African society. I'm going to use Nigeria for example. We have three main ethnic groups in Nigeria: the Yoruba, the Igbos, and the Hausas. And across these three, according to my research, apprenticeship has always existed. Let me start with the Hausa. The Hausa kingdom was known to be very trade-centric well before colonialism. This means that they embarked on long journeys between the western side of Africa and the northern side of Africa. And along these trade routes, you had a lot of traders who sold leather goods, weaving, textiles, cotton, silversmith, all these skills. And for these skills to be handed over to the next generation, apprenticeship was required. A good example of someone to use is Dangote. The Dangote family, big and massive as it is, actually passed on trade culture from one generation to the other, which means that the majority of skills that Dangote possibly had at the start of Dangote groups of company were things that he had picked up while he was being trained as a young lad. Now, the Hausas today are still very relevant in the fashion space because when you're thinking of leather goods, the Hausa lands, Kano, Kaduna, many of the states in the northern side of Nigeria are known to have the best tanneries. If you're also thinking of cotton farming, you're also thinking of many northern states. They farm cottons and they also transform these cottons into textiles that we can use. Sadly, our textile factories are currently inactive. But for the sake of understanding history, it's important to know that apprenticeship had always been an integral part of different ethnic groups in Nigeria, the Hausas not excluded. Now let us go to the Yorubas. In the Yoruba land, apprenticeship is what you'll call Ise Kiko, which directly translates to learning work or to learn a trade or a skill. Now, you have the trainer, which regarded as Oluko, and the apprentice, which regarded as Akeko, which literally translates to student. Now, on this side of Nigeria, apprenticeship also required handing over trade secrets, craft secrets through oral traditions, which means that a craft master, be it in textile, in weaving, in ashoke weaving, name it, would have young boys and girls, and he would have to teach them orally, in words and in practice. However, these young lads would also have to exchange these skills they are learning with menial tasks that they will be given. Right? Now, let me go to the Igbos. The Igbos are said to be the masters of apprentice in modern day business world. Why is that? Because their apprenticeship system has stayed and remained relevant and has even become case studies in global institutions. Now let us talk about the Igbos and why their apprenticeship system seems to be very fascinating. Now you're going to pardon my pronunciation. I am not Igbo. In some places it's called Igba boy. In some other places it's called Imu Aya or Imu Aya. Kindly look at the definition of the pronunciation on the screen. In some other places, you have Imu Oluwaka. I am not very sure of how it's pronounced. The purpose of the apprenticeship system across all this cultural background is for a young person to learn a skill. Now, you are starting your apprenticeship at a very young age, and you're required to stay for what? A minimum of 2 years. There are even some apprenticeship structures that require that you learn for 6 years. I know that sounds crazy. But guess what? That is why we have skills that have been transferred from one generation to the other today. We have the weaving techniques, we have the tie and dye techniques, we have the tanning techniques, we have the smithing techniques, we have, name it, even in the farming. Skills were transferred through apprenticeship systems. Now, in these apprenticeship systems, there are 3 phases. You have the talent identification, you have the scholarship, and then you have the graduation. Now, I deliberately use those three phases to explain. The talent identification is when a young lad is sat with and discussed with, what do you want to learn? Now, if this young person is troublesome and requires to just, be dumped somewhere to learn a skill, in some cases, parents or guardians will identify skills or crafts that are very lucrative or that exist in their family. And this young person is placed in that craft under a craft master for a duration of time. Agreements are made as to how long he or she will learn, the benefits he or she will gain from the apprenticeship structure. For example, it might be provided with feeding, allowances, or accommodation at the most. Now, once the talent has been placed, the learning experience begins. For the Igbos, the Yorubas, and the Hausas, graduation is often similar. Once you're done with your agreed time for apprenticeship, a ceremony is conducted to celebrate the fact that you stayed through, you learned the skills, and you're ready to become independent, which also implies start out your own business. Now, for the Igbos, they will bring together your relatives and families and celebrate over special drinks. At the same time, your master is required to set you up, provide you with funds to set up your own business. For the Yorubas, there's a cliche we use, it's called freedom. You have to pronounce it the way I said it. Freedom. What this really means is that at the end of your training, your family will come with the equipment that you would need to set up your own business. Now, your master is going to pray for you and bless your equipment and usher you into the world of business. I believe that it's the same across board. And one thing is clear about apprenticeship. The student or the one who comes to learn actually comes seeking a favor to receive knowledge. In some cases, you're required to pay to learn these skills. In some cases, you are required to offer some other skill or your time and abilities in exchange for knowledge. Now, we've talked about the history of apprenticeship, just an overview, because if we were to dive right in, we'll be here for the next 2 hours. Now, in today's world, apprenticeship has evolved into what we call internships. One of the reasons will be because talents are too eager to launch out. However, they still value the role of internship. In today's world, we have internship opportunities as mentioned in the previous model, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or more than a year, depending on what area you want to specialize in. In the fashion space, we still have the apprenticeship system in existence. Even though it has been refined to be a lot more modern, it is still required that the student pays to learn in the fashion space. So you pay your master, and your master is required to teach you all that he or she knows. However, the bulk of your learning comes by observation. You have to stay with your master, watch how they cut, watch how they take measurements, watch how they pedal, watch how they make all the necessary designs you could possibly think of, and then imitate the same. So pretty much, the student is required to be very attentive, as there is rarely theory infused in apprenticeship learning model in our own side of the world. Having discussed what internships are apprenticeship systems similar to internships? Yes, they are. However, there are a lot of differences. Let us talk about what makes them similar. The point remains that someone is attending or working in an organization to also learn. In apprenticeship and internship platforms, you are there to learn. You are there to add on to what you already know or to learn afresh. Another similarity between apprenticeship and internship is that there is a master and there are a group of students. So let's talk about the differences and similarities between apprenticeships and internships. First will be the time. The duration for apprenticeships are usually longer when compared to internships. Apprenticeships are usually 2 years minimum, in some cases 6 years. Now it depends on the the specific field in fashion or the area of fashion you want to become an expert in. If you're interested in buying and selling textiles, which is very common among the Igbos, you would need to be on the Igbo boy for a minimum of 2 years or more. At the end, your craftsmaster is going to set you up. In internships, the most you will get is to be retained as an employee, of which you most likely start from a junior role and work your way to the top. But in apprenticeship, once you're done, it implies you're ready to set up your own business. Locally, in our fashion industry, internships are not structured. Secondly, not all internships are paid. Now, lastly, internships in our industry can be very practical. Now, let's compare this to the global scene. Internationally, internships are not always practical. Most often, we find that interns are given general responsibilities as opposed to apprentices who are given technically inclined responsibilities. So, the choice is yours at this point. If you are interested in interning internationally, it implies that you're most likely going to learn the general rudiments of running a fashion business. But locally, you're exposed to different aspects of running a business, which I think is advantageous for you. Now, another reason why apprenticeship is different from internships are that in apprenticeship, you do not really get a certificate. Rather, you get what we call certificates because you're living with the ability. And the proof of your apprenticeship is the product you make, the skills you showcase in your own venture. In internships, chances are that you get recommendations, you get referrals, or certifications that you've completed the internship program. Now, another thing to consider is the fact that there are no stipends in apprenticeships locally. But in internships, you get the chance to get paid. Now, if you're a second time, third time intern, the chances are that you already have basic transferable skills that you can give your business. So those skills can earn you some small stipends. Another thing to note with the differences between apprenticeships and internship are job opportunities or career growth. With apprenticeship, once you're done, you're sent forth into the business world to face whatever challenges comes to every business person. But you most likely would lack the business acumen that will help you build your business. So it might take a longer time for you to find your footings. However, with internships, there are opportunities for you to get entry-level roles or possibly even jump different levels to attain managerial roles, depending on how long you've interned for. So what am I saying? With internships, there's room for career growth. There's room to explore different terrains or to diversify or choose a field you would prefer to, build a career in. Now let's talk about which one to choose. Should you go for apprenticeship or internships? I'd like to know. However, I would like to advise you, if you're very much interested in technical inclined fields in fashion, you can explore a mix of apprenticeship and internship opportunities. But if you're interested in the non-technical, a background in apprenticeship can be advantageous because it gives you an insight into how the craftsmen, the creatives work. However, you need to focus more on internships because you learn the workplace skills, work culture, soft skills, industry relevant managerial skills, and many more. I know that this particular model requires a lot of listening, but I hope that you've been able to understand that internships today began way back with apprenticeship. Let me round off with this story. As a little girl, I used to play in my grandma's store. She had 20 or 25 apprentices in her shop. The name of the shop at the time was called Super Fashion Studio. I had a very simple office. My office was right under the cotton table, covered around with fabric swatches. And I had my scissors that was very blunt, by the way, where I cut and played with scraps. I recollect well that many of these ladies were given responsibilities that had to do with while they were there, cutting, sewing, finishing up garments, pressing garments, ironing garments, doing quality control checks. But I also remember very well, they used to sweep, clean, run errands for my grandmother. Guess what? It was not seen as a taboo. Rather, it was seen as part of what it required for you to complete your apprenticeship. I don't know how many people today would be open to running errands like those women did. But guess what? Even till now, many of these women now make garments for my grandmother. Because she's very old, she cannot, of course, sit and sew. But they appreciate her today for all the things that she was able to teach them and show them, and all the lessons and skills that they had acquired during their apprenticeship years. So it's left for you to decide. Do you want a mix of apprenticeship and internship, or do you want to focus strictly on the internship? I'll see you in the next module.